At some point or another, nearly all great Sith Lords sought a way to live forever. A strong desire to cheat death was the inevitable end of their all-consuming quests for power. Over the centuries, a few Sith were successful in avoiding the Reaper, for a time. Some used the arcane technique of essence transfer to steal replacement bodies, while others tied their spirits to dark side artifacts so they could persist as ghosts. In this manner, some Sith managed to live for centuries or even millennia. There was one Sith, however, who outlasted all his peers. He threatened the galaxy for over 7,000 years, going dormant for long periods before rising again, causing terrible plagues whenever he woke. In this video, we'll be discussing one of the most dangerous Sith Lords of all time.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The story begins with a tale that should be familiar to many of you. In 6900 BBY, 12 Dark Jedi, exiled after their defeat in the 100-Year Darkness, arrived on Korriban. There, they overpowered the natives, a species of red-skinned, Force-sensitive humanoids called Sith, and proclaimed themselves the Dark Lords of the Sith. Together, they established the first Sith Empire, and though all 12 of these original Sith Lords died after a few decades, their legacy persisted for thousands of years. The leader of these early Sith Lords was Ajunta Pal, who we've covered in a video previously. Pal wasn't the Sith we're looking for, however. Rather, this video will be about one of his followers, a man named Karnes Moore. Once, Moore had been a respected Jedi Knight, but he ended up joining the Dark Jedi during the 100-Year Darkness, becoming one of their army's greatest leaders. Together with Sorcerer's Sin, Ajunta Pal's right-hand woman, Moore created the Leviathans, massive abominations of the dark side that fed on the Force. He was also an accomplished warrior, fighting alongside the greatest of the Dark Jedi in the final battle on Korbos. Despite Moore's skill and power, however, he and the others were defeated and exiled in the end. After the Sith Empire was established, scheming and infighting between the Sith Lords began almost immediately. Even before their exile, the 12 Lords had been rivals, united only by a shared hatred of the Jedi. It didn't help matters that the 12 survivors of Korbos were all extremely powerful in their own right. While Ajunta Pal and Sorcerer's Sin reigned supreme as Dark Lord and Shadowhand, others conspired to take the throne of Ziost for themselves. Some of them were certainly capable. Baron Drapar, the last admiral of the Dark Jedi's fleet, had already assembled a great army of battleships and Massasai to replace what he lost at Korbos, while Zozan, the Marchioness of the Black Legions, had amassed a great collection of Sith amulets and artifacts. Then there was Karnes Moore. With the help of Sorcerer's Sin, Karnes created the Moore Talisman, an immensely powerful dark side artifact to which he bound his spirit. Originally, Sin planned to create 3 amulets, one for Moore, one for Baron Drapar, and one for herself that would be the most powerful. Moore's and Drapar's were completed, and Sin hoped their power would drive the 2 Sith Lords to battle each other, but instead, Drapar led his fleet in a premature assault on the Republic. He never returned, and the Drapar Talisman was lost with him. It's unknown if the Sin Talisman was ever completed, but regardless, only the Moore Talisman became significant. The Moore Talisman gave its wielder the power to rapidly mutate sentient beings into mindless thralls called Rakghouls, which the talisman's wearer could command. Through this artifact, Karnes Moore gained the power to convert his enemies into monsters that would serve him without question. This made Moore nearly impossible to stop, as he could convert any army that challenged him into a horde of rat ghouls, then turn them against his enemies. This didn't stop the other Sith Lords from scheming against Maul, however. Before he left on his ill-fated quest to invade the Republic, Baron Drapar created a stasis casket specifically designed to contain the powers of the talisman. Through the use of this casket, he captured Karness Maul and managed to have him killed. But Karness Maul was much too powerful to die quietly. His spirit persisted, clinging to the Maul talisman. What happened to the artifact after his death was unknown. It was lost for centuries, despite the efforts of many Sith Lords. It didn't resurface until 3,000 years later, long after the fall of the Sith Empire. By 4000 BBY, the Maul talisman had somehow made it to the planet Taris. Its owner was killed in a cave-in in the planet's Undercity, but the Maul talisman remained active, turning some of the outcasts who lived in the Undercity into rat ghouls, which multiplied by spreading the rat ghoul plague to anyone they encountered. During the Mandalorian Wars, the talisman was discovered at last by Zane Carrick, a former Jedi Padawan. Then the Mandalorians got their hands on it. They had no luck in getting the artifact to respond, however, as none of them were Force sensitive. Later, Zane Carrick managed to reclaim the talisman from a Mandalorian mustering camp on the desolate planet Jebel, the very same world where the casket Drapar had built to contain Karness Maul was hidden. The Maul talisman bonded with one of Carrick's allies, the Jedi Shadow Celeste Morn, who the spirit of Karness Maul determined was a suitable host. Under Maul's influence, Morn transformed the entire Mandalorian army on Jebel into a host of rat ghouls, which the spirit of the long-dead Sith Lord planned to use to build a new Sith Empire. However, upon realizing that Morn had been corrupted by Karness Maul, Zane Carrick sealed her in Baron Drapar's stasis casket, trapping Maul and neutralizing the talisman for a time. Celeste Morn and Karness Maul remained in stasis for 4,000 years. In 19 BBY, however, Drapar's casket was discovered by miners on Jebel. It came into the possession of Darth Vader, who had heard stories about the Maul talisman and sought to claim it for himself. He released Celeste Morn from stasis, but Morn attacked him, fearing the consequences of Karness Maul taking the body of a Sith Lord. She turned the clones accompanying Vader into rat ghouls to drive the Sith Lord away. She and the spirit of Maul was stranded on a desert moon for the next 2 decades, during which time Morn continued to grapple with Maul's spirit, preventing him from taking over her mind completely. 20 years later, new arrivals came to the desert moon, this time members of the Rebel Alliance, Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa. Again, Karness Maul tried to claim a new host, but Celeste Morn saved Luke and Leia from being taken over by the Sith Lord and allowed them to escape the moon unharmed. However, not long afterwards, Morn escaped the moon aboard an abandoned transport. For the next century, she wandered the fringes of known space, taking Karness Maul with her wherever she went. She used the talisman's power to turn everyone she met into rat ghouls as a precaution, preventing Maul from taking any new hosts. Well over a century after her encounter with Luke and Leia, Morn used the talisman to take over the Star Destroyer, Iron Sun, which she had her rat ghouls pilot into the heart of the deep core, where she hoped no one would be able to follow her. But Karness Maul knew that someone would come along sooner or later, and that he would eventually be able to claim a new host. That someone ended up being Cade Skywalker, who boarded the Iron Sun during the Legacy era. As it turned out, this Skywalker had learned a healing technique that rendered him immune to the rat ghoul plague, and he proved resistant to the other effects of the Maul talisman. Believing Skywalker was strong enough to handle Karness Maul, Celeste Morn allowed him to kill her, finally putting an end to her torment. Maul triumphantly tried to claim Skywalker as his new host, finally ready to begin his conquest of the galaxy, but this proved to be a miscalculation. Skywalker was skilled in the Force technique Shatterpoint, with which he managed to destroy the Maw Talisman and finally eliminate the Sith Lord's spirit. Karness Maw may not have been able to do all that much in his 7,000 years, but the threat he posed was enormous. It was only through the constant effort of Celeste Morn that he was stopped from conquering the whole galaxy with an army of rat ghouls. But what do you think? Are there other Sith Lords you'd like us to make a video about? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below.